In sports, the scoreboard doesn't tell the full story, but Netflix does. Stories about dads who happen to be world-class quarterbacks and a battle for the heart, soul, and direction of the multi-billion-dollar business of F1. Whether you're a diehard fan or you're brand new, Netflix has the stories for every type of fan. You can watch these incredible sports stories like Quarterback, F1 Drive to Survive, Untold, and many more now on Netflix.
Apple Card is the credit card created by Apple. You earn 3% daily cash back up front when you use it to buy a new iPhone 15, AirPods, or any products at Apple. And you can automatically grow your daily cash at 4.15% annual percentage yield when you open a high-yield savings account. Apply for Apple Card in the Wallet app on iPhone. Apple Card subject to credit approval. Savings is available to Apple Card owners subject to eligibility. Savings accounts by Goldman Sachs Bank USA, member FDIC. Terms apply.
This episode is brought to you by Reese's Peanut Butter Cups. Some things are just better together, like party playlists and Friday nights, campfires and ghost stories, peanut butter and chocolate. And Reese's Cups are the perfect combination of creamy peanut butter and delicious milk chocolate. So, when you want something sweet, you can't do better than Reese's Peanut Butter Cups. Buy Reese's today wherever candy is sold.
Serie A Chronicles is a Mina Chronicles production.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Serie A Chronicles podcast. I'm Mina and as always, I'm joined by Nicky Bandini, but we also have a special guest for today. But before we get into all of that, I do want to tell you that we have a 14-day free trial for our Chronicles Tifosi Patreon membership. Head on over to serieachronicles.com/Patreon now and subscribe to the Chronicles Tifosi membership for free. Now on to the fun stuff. So as always, I'm obviously joined by Nicky Bandini, but we have a new guest for today. Sometimes he's my footballing soulmate. Sometimes I want to kill him. I'm sure by now most people know. Hello and welcome to Nima.
Hello, Mina.
Nima, of course, is the co-host of the other Italian football podcast, host of Studio Inter podcast, and runs the sempreinter.com website.
Thank you, Mina. Thank you, Nicky.
Yeah, but can you pronounce your surname for me? I always have a struggle saying it.
Yes.
Which I shouldn't.
I know. Tavallaey Roodsari.
One more time.
Tavallaey Roodsari.
I just love, by the way, because I need to say this at the top. Like, I love that Mina has a nemesis, a frenemy, I think you guys are, right? Like, who is called Nima, Mina and Nima. Like, the fact that you two have got, like, and that one of you's Juventus and one of you's Inter, yeah. Like, the fact that you two exist in the same sort of, like, universe is just perfect.
My headmistress at school was dyslexic and she used to call me Nima most of the time. So, and then she'd be like, sorry. So I feel like that. And that's happened to me quite a lot, you know. Anyway, Nicky, you've just come back from a wonderful trip to Italy. Are you feeling any holiday blues?
Take me back. Well, it wasn't just holiday, was it? I had some holiday, which everyone heard about on last week's show. And then I went on from there to cover the Milan Napoli game for Stan Sports, which was fantastic. Really brilliant to be at San Siro for a European quarterfinal. God, it's been a minute since we've had one of those in the Champions League. So, yeah, I think, you know, it's funny. I feel like the conversation about the end of San Siro has been going on for so long that I've stopped believing in it. Like, there's been people asking me what I think about San Siro coming down for a decade. And, you know, I will be very sad when it happens, but my sort of expectation that it's going to happen anytime soon, I think I've heard them cry wolf too many times to believe there's a wolf there anymore. But at some point it will. At some point it will happen. And I will say, if anyone hasn't had that experience who's listening and is looking for their, you know, footballing trip to plan, it is always an extraordinary place. And when it is gone, it's going to be a big loss to everyone. So go while you still can, I guess.
Nima, is it your favourite stadium, San Siro, Giuseppe Meazza?
Without a doubt. An evening game with the lights of San Siro, like as the song goes, the famous Italian song talks about the lights of San Siro in the night. It really is not unlike anything else. But having said that, it is a football stadium and it's not fit for purpose anymore. And Wembley was also a classic football ground, but they had to rebuild that because in order to modernize it. And I think a lot of the debate around this has become people are reacting as if someone's asking to turn the Colosseum into a shopping mall. And that's not really what's happening here. It's a football stadium that's not fit for purpose. And the fundamentals of it, the foundation of it is all over 100 years old. And that will, you don't need to be an engineer to understand that engineering has evolved in the last 100 years, and that you need to sometimes kill your darlings a little bit in order to move on to the future. Personally, I don't understand. I think Inter and Milan should have their own stadium each. I understand the idea, the financial incentives behind, creating one stadium together, because at the end of the day, the year has 365 days. Okay, so if you've got 17, 18 games, then with 3 games in the Champions League minimum, that's 21 days of a year that you're open for business. You're in the entertainment business, so I understand why you would share that, because you would halve the costs and you'd still keep your own revenue when you're the home team and so on. So I think that's a smart idea in terms of cost efficiency. But it has to happen. And I don't understand why the clubs, instead of just banging their heads against the wall with Milan City Mayor Beppe Sala, just don't go somewhere else and do it. And the fact that they don't do it suggests to me that they're not serious about it. I'm sorry. I have zero faith in Jerry Cardinale and Stephen Zhang when they talk about these things.
I was just thinking about that, idea of them having 2 separate stadiums. And the first thing that comes to my head when they talk about 2 separate stadiums is just like, but they have to be as big as this, because actually, Italian football has not always filled its stadiums, but Milan, they tend to. Like, even in the lower years, you were getting upwards of 60,000 in there, and lately, that's nearly 75,000 or so. That's pretty consistently full, and I do think romantically, and maybe it doesn't. Again, maybe romance shouldn't come into it, because there is business, and Italian football clubs need to do everything they physically can to keep up in terms of business, because they're falling further and further behind, and that's not a new story. That's years old than the rest of Europe. But there is something romantically about having a shared stadium where you get those derby nights where the home end is still there for both teams, right? Like the Curva, Inter will always have the Curva Nord, and Milan always have the Curva Sud, and that relationship.
Yeah,
I don't know. It feels like it's part of what makes those derbies so special. It's like you go there, and even though one team's at home, both teams still have that part of the stadium that's theirs, and it makes it feel extra special to me anyway.
No, me too. I will agree 100%.
Oh, look at the nostalgia, can you? Okay, we're not here to discuss stadiums. We have too much going on in football to discuss whether or not we should be tearing down stadiums. I kind of agree with both of you, so this is why I want to move on. Okay, let's start off with the weekend games. Obviously, a little bit disappointing for, I think, most teams, right? Other than the glory of Roma or Lazio right now. Simon doing a little bit of a fist bump over there. But you were the only one not doing a fist bump in Europe. But anyway, what I am, another side gig. Sorry, guys. But what I was going to say is Inter. Let's start off with that team, because I simply cannot understand how they can do and play so majestically in Europe. Majestically may be too much of a superlative to use, but certainly a team that is in control, that can create, that can defend, that plays with intensity and control and heart, and has the ability to suffer, has the ability to create, but also at the same time manage such dismal performances week in and week out in Serie A. Now, here's a thing I read this morning that sort of upsets me, in the sense that they're now looking to potentially pay a bonus to some of the players in order to get them to qualify.
Yeah, they've denied that, haven't they? Inter have come out and denied it now since that's not true. But then again, Inter and these clubs and their communication, you don't know what's true anymore, because again, boyhood cried wolf. When people lie repeatedly or bend the truth, then you lose whatever faith in their honesty and their sincerity. So I have no idea, but I just know that it's important to state that Inter have denied that bonus, those discussions. But look, the more the more I think of this season, I think this has been one of the most pazza Inter seasons that I can remember. It reminds me of 93-94 when Inter almost got relegated but won the UEFA Cup. And the UEFA Cup back then, of course, being what essentially more similar to the Champions League now than the European Cup was, because there was only one team. The champions of Europe were just in one tournament, right? Then back then it was teams 2 to 5 from the top leagues. So Inter that season almost got relegated from the Serie A for the first time in their history, but they end up winning the UEFA Cup with Bergkamp and Jonk, and of course Osvaldo Bagnoli getting sacked, and interim coach coming in, and that was also towards the end of the Pellegrini era, the owner back then, because Moratti bought the club a year later, and I think there's a lot of parallels between that era in Inter's history and now. We've got an owner who is on his way out. It's only a matter of time. Personally, I don't think it'll be done before May 2024, or at least earliest November of this year, 2023. And you're also got a situation with a squad that is incredibly old. I mean, one of the oldest in the Serie A. And we know what happens. We saw it with Ancelotti at Milan. He only won one Serie A. They turn up for the Champions League because that's when they don't need that kind of, they overperform, not overperform, but they kind of get themselves going for the important games. But in the league against Monza, Empoli, or Fiorentina, etc., they just don't seem to be able to deliver from a psychological point of view. But if we go into the actual details of it,
I kind of want to pick up on you saying psychological part of it there, Nima, because I think this weekend was sort of a less coherent performance against Salernitana. Salernitana game, I think, was extraordinary because there was no logic to not scoring more goals than they scored. There just wasn't. This weekend there was a bit sort of less clear-cut chances, but still, just sort of taking a step backwards. The last 4 Serie A games, Inter have taken 84 shots and scored once. I mean, we can talk about them being not as good as they could be. We can talk about the overall performance of being there. But above all, there's just some sort of psychosis going on about not being able to put the ball in the net. Yeah.
And it's been like this all season. And it was kind of like this last season as well. I mean, that's why they brought in Lukaku, because they obviously didn't feel that Lautaro Martinez was the bomber that they expected him to be last season. He missed a little bit too much. But Romelu Lukaku has been an abject failure since coming. I mean, he's not scored from open play. He's not scored from open play since August. Yes, he's a great. The only thing he's world class at right now is taking penalties. But other than that, nothing. And I think that's the second point I wanted to make as well, Nicky, is exactly that. They create so many chances. It's not just taking shots for sake of taking shots. They're creating a ridiculous amount of top quality chances. But Lautaro, Dzeko, Lukaku, and Correa, whenever he's played, they just simply cannot convert. And that's nothing you can put on the coach. That's just a qualitative problem. It's a psychological problem maybe as well, a mental problem, whatever you want. But when all 4 of your strikers are missing sitters, we're talking missing sitters here. Against Fiorentina, Lukaku missed a sitter. Against Salernitana, he missed a sitter. Against Spezia, they all missed sitters, and Lautaro missed a penalty. I mean, it's just, when you do that, you won't win football games. It's really that simple. And I mean, I look at XG as a tool to describe the quality of chances, and people use different, of course, outlets to see where, people count for XG and every chance differently depending on what the platform is. But I use it as a tool just to see, okay, how high quality chance have they create. And in Inter are pretty much over closer to 3 per game than they are to 1. And that tells you everything you need to know. They are being let down by the strikers. If Mauro Icardi was playing at this Inter, we wouldn't have this problem, because that guy has I don't know how. I mean, at one point, every 0 point, what was it?
You'd have a whole different class of problems. The problems would be, the ultras threatening to come to his house and beat him.
Exactly. And you had one Danara as well. And
what about Vlahovic? Do you think Vlahovic would be scoring at this Inter?
Yes, without a doubt, because he's a goal scorer.
Not at Juventus.
Hey gang, just wanted to let you know that you can now get a free 14-day trial of our Chronicles Tifosi Patreon membership.
Subscribe now for free for 14 days to get access to all of our full episodes, solo minisodes, bonus content, even behind the scene bonuses like our chats about football, and of course, our chats about life in general. You can also get the entire back catalogue of Serie A Chronicles content.
So head over to serieachronicles.com/Patreon and subscribe to the Chronicles Tifosi membership for free.
So overall, 116 shots in 2023, 25 on target in 116 shots, 1 goal, and it was a penalty. Okay. So, I mean, this is diabolical when we look at the losses that they have managed. So we understand that this is, if I'm just somebody who's coming in as a businessman and I've come to see Inter and I'm sort of a management consultant to look at where it is that I can try to build on the side, you know, it's really difficult for me to sort of accuse Inzaghi, not because I think Inzaghi is not like, I don't think he's a great coach, nor do I think he's the worst coach possible, right? I think the team is creating a lot of chances. I think that they should be scoring a lot more goals. I think they're doing terrifically well in cup competition and almost outperforming a lot of these teams, obviously in Europe, and defeating some of the biggest names right now. Some favorites in Barcelona. Certainly they were built to lose against Benfica. So I think it's kind of exceptional what he's doing. Do they need a psychologist? Potentially. Why is it that the squad is old? And then you sort of know that Ricky Massara and Milan have attended sort of summits and meetings about joining, creating next gen. But there's nothing been from Inter. There's nothing looked at as to how to invest in the squad, right? So we know that there is also a club right now that has this huge, what would you say, a debt with Oak Tree that they have to pay back by next year. We know that they really can't invest in the squad.
Well, the owners do. The owners
so they probably have to sell in order to come back with this. So we have all sorts of problems where you feel like the club can't really take off. But I don't know how many coaches would be doing so well. It's either doing really well in Serie A with the squad that you have, or doing really well perhaps in the Champions League, and they might have chosen the latter. So who's to blame here? Is it the management that just don't have enough money to create a club that's capable of really doing something on all sides? Is it Inzaghi for not having the psychological power to motivate this team, where there are stories now, even if they are just rumors and nothing more than that, about giving bonuses to the side to motivate them? Is it, where is it that I can pin the blame, if I'm honest with you?
I just want to jump in there, Mina, as well, and say, like, I mean, you know, Nima, tell me what you think. But like, if this was my team, being blunt about it, I care much more about that Champions League quarterfinal than I do about the league right now. Luca Marchegiani was on Sky Sport, former Italy goalkeeper, at the weekend, and someone sort of saying to him, oh, you know, the top 4 could be more valuable financially than being in the Champions League semi-final. What are we even talking about here, was his answer. You know, because the mismanagement of a club should mean that you give up your dream in the Champions League. No, pull the other one. They're 2-0 up against Benfica and heading into a very strong chance of playing in a Champions League semi-final. And that is the most important thing in their season right now, as far as I'm concerned. I think you can still have the question which you were just trying to ask about the mismanagement. But I do think, you know, I think it's not an accident, by the way, that 6 of the 8 teams in the Champions League quarterfinals didn't win this week across Europe. That's not just in Italy, that's going across Europe. Everyone's tired. Everyone had a World Cup jammed in the middle of their season. Everyone's having to focus their energies. And if I was, same applies to Milan, same applies to Napoli. If I was any of those clubs right now, and Milan took the most extreme approach because Pioli changed 10 of his starters, all of them except the goalkeeper, I would be going, I don't care for this week. This week, my focus is on the midweek game.
So we're being too harsh then?
No, I don't think we are. I think there's, I don't think we can pin the blame on just one thing. I think it's, look, with Inter, look, of Chinese proverbs, fish rot from a head down. Suning, after the pandemic, have no interest. They basically took out their loan from Oak Tree, using their collateral, their ownership of Inter as collateral, to secure Inter's secure Inter's existence until 2024 May, when the loan expires. The fact that they turned down BC Partners is where the mistake was made. They should have sold the club then. They would have had, but they wanted 1 billion in cash, and now they risk not even getting anything, because the club has so many debts. They have a bond that matures, I think, 2027. They've got the club debt is around 300 million, something like that. So basically what you're saying is you want someone to give you 1 billion in cash and then take on another 1 billion in financial debt. No one's going to do that in this in this reality we live in, unless they're insane, and unless they are Elon Musk paying 44 billion for Twitter. Like no other human being would do something that stupid, and that's where we are. So what the problem is that with Suning being where they are, pretty much no longer being interested, completely dismantling their sporting, venture from. They've done that domestically in China. They've done it globally. They don't care. They are not in that business anymore. And I don't want to get into the politics of it, but also with everything happening in the world and China deciding to no longer invest in non-essential businesses and industries, Chinese investment in sports and entertainment out in the West is over. It's dead. It's finished. So that's that. And then you have Stephen Zhang, who evidently is now been given free rein to run this club. And he doesn't know what he's doing. He's completely clueless. And when you don't have someone running a tight ship, and then this kind of goes down throughout the organization. They brought in Simone Inzaghi because he's a company man and he's done the best he can. Of course, he's made so many mistakes as well, as any young coach would do in his first big club role. I, for example, think I hold him still as tactically and as a talent, the next Italian super coach, as I've said for many years. I've thought this for a long time. I think he's brilliant at it. But where I do think he needs to develop, is he's not assertive in his communication to the players. He lacks a kind of ability to get these guys fired up. He speaks, you have to remember, this guy's the biggest coach he ever had was Sven-Goran Eriksson. And he's a complete mirror of Sven-Goran Eriksson in terms of how he communicates, of how he leads. He's not that kind. He's never going to be Antonio Conte that comes out with a flamethrower and fries everyone to get a reaction out of them. That's just not who he is. He'll never be that guy. He will, he's not the management by fear kind of guy. That's just not who he is. He prepares the games well. He prepares the players well tactically, and he expects them to deliver because they're professionals. The problem is that nowadays football players have to be babied a little bit. And he needs to develop that side of his management career if he's going to have the career that I actually expect him to have, because I think tactically the football he plays them, I think he's destined for greatness, without a doubt.
Oh, Nicky, would you agree with that? Or is that just a little bit too far-reaching?
I think it's really interesting. Like, I think I said on the last podcast, I spent part of my family time with my cousin, who's a big Inter fan. He goes all games, and I think he really sort of, what Nima's saying echoes a lot of what he feels as a fan about personality being this big thing with Inzaghi, like not feeling like he sort of speaks the right way in press conferences being the thing that annoys him. Like he doesn't sort of have that authority that a Conte did, or sort of, it seems to accept things that he sort of considers unacceptable, or even he was saying, that the success is sort of harping on, for instance, we won in Naples, why don't I get enough credit for that? Sort of suggesting that's not the big club mentality, as it were. I don't know. It's interesting hearing some of that echoed. I don't know. I think he's a really curious one for me. I think he's got his unhelpful obsessions, and for me, Correa is the big unhelpful obsession at Inter. But I also think 100% you can't pin everything that's been difficult there on him, because exactly, Nima's laid it out very well. You've got an ownership who simply are not politically able to invest right now, and therefore you've got a club that's running on
fumes. They're running on fumes.
Fumes, yeah. Running on sort of past glory almost. Yeah, it's sort of clinging on to what it's got, and that can't sustain forever. So if they were to get to a Champions League semi-final or a final this year, it'd be a pretty cool achievement. I doubt it would be the beginning of something going forward.
It's the end. This is the end of the cycle, of the Suning cycle. I think it's evident that with everything that's happened, this is the end. This is it. In the summer, they're going to bring that wage budget down from 134, 137 million gross per year to around 100 million gross per year, because no Italian club can sustain gross wages for the playing squad of 130, 140 million a year. It's just not sustainable.
And I think that can be a good thing. I mean, Napoli and Lazio and Fiorentina are showing us that certainly a lot can be achieved. Maybe you can't really navigate all three competitions, certainly, but I think you can build well if you have the right people in place. Just before I quickly move on, because it's time that we discuss Milan and Napoli, obviously, which is the big game in the Champions League. Just a quick one. You both think that they'll beat Benfica, right? Or they'll get through, right? Become a member at patreon.com/Serie A Chronicles for regular bonus episodes and content.
Sports Social Podcast Network.
Attention car shoppers. Right now at South Carolina Federal Credit Union, you can get a new or used auto loan and pay nothing until 2024. And no payments for 90 days means nothing out of pocket going into the new year. Plus, we have flexible rates and terms, so you could make the best financial choice for you. Learn more at scfederal.org/auto loans. That's scfederal.org/auto loans. Certain restrictions apply. Existing South Carolina federal credit loans are excluded.